Big edition for the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast for you tonight. With you, as always, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com. Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB here in Kansas City. We're doing a little mock draft. First of all, we're building our big board. I'm going to tell you how many first-round picks are there really in this draft in any given year. I will tell you that from talking to personnel people over the years, Jeff can probably tell you this as well, there's anywhere from, say, 10 to 25. Usually there is not 32. In fact, I don't know if there's ever been 32 guys that are legitimate first-round picks. We'll go over who we have as the legit first-round picks in this draft. We'll talk about what the differences are, why we have some versus others, little differences amongst us. There are some of the ones that are obvious, but the differences, I think, are the interesting points to discuss. What are the positions that are deep in this draft as far as this first round goes? What positions are missing in the first round? Where is Kansas City looking to trade up? We'll put in a mock draft, and we'll start pulling guys off our board and see, there's only a handful of guys left. Is this the spot where Brett Beach is looking to trade up? And does anybody fall to the Kansas City Chiefs on our true first-round board in those first 31 picks? We're breaking it down right now here on the Red, Gold&Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is a columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
All right, thank you very much, Curtis. Off and running, guys. Always like to start with what we learned from the exercise, going through and picking who are the guys that are legitimately first-round picks, doing it looking through red and gold glasses, what the Chiefs' perspective would be on this. And we came up with how many. We'll talk about that here in a second. But, Jeff, anything jump at you trying to figure this out as to who are legitimate guys that you'd be happy to get in the first round? What stayed with you?
It's a harder exercise than you imagine. Yeah, I think, I had 19 guys, and I'm sure most teams don't have 19 first-round grades on the guys they're looking at. But you sort of get swallowed up by all this information and all these scouting reports and all this hype, and it's hard not to like guys. But ultimately, I think that I felt like I came in too high, and I think that will probably bear out when we actually see the real draft. But there's some guys you like, but not a lot of stud guys, and that makes it harder when you're trying to attach first-round grades to people.
How about you? What did you learn, Sam?
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. I think I wound up at 18, and my guess is these teams are somewhere in that 16 to 17, maybe 15 to 17 range. But
let me ask you this, because you both said that, but are they right? Right? Like, because there are plenty of guys that are going to go in the second round are going to be really good. I agree. I think most teams are going to land, and I think they're more different than people would realize. They're going to land in the 10 to 15 range most years, but are they right to do that? Or are they missing out on some guys that
every team is going to miss out on dozens of players in this draft? I mean, there's first round talent that will go in the second round and the third round in the draft. But I think the consensus, I think we'll hear Brett Veach usually reveals the first round grades. If not his pre-draft presser, his post-draft presser. And I just think he's gonna have a smaller number than 18. Yeah. But I mean, the other takeaway is, when we sorted this by position when we did this exercise, and when you look at the positions that have multiple players, the Chiefs could use those spots. So this lines up potentially well for the Chiefs late in the first round. If maybe not everybody needs if people actually draft by need, which they do, and then potentially somebody could fall to the Chiefs.
All right, let's start breaking it down, and we'll go position group by position group, who we have as legit first rounders. By the way, you said 19 for Jeff, right? 18 for you, Sam, and I had 21 on the list. So we'll talk about where the differences are. They start at quarterback. Neither Jeff nor I put anybody as a legit first-round pick in our eyes at the quarterback. Doesn't mean we don't think there won't be quarterbacks taken. They always get pushed up high. We mentioned Bo Nix was listed as a second-rounder, and he went up high. All these quarterbacks went in the top 10 last year. It's because of the value of the position. But we don't see any real first-rounders. You do, though. You got Cam Ward in there. Is that something you think they would actually – if he falls all the way to 31, you take him, you score home away, and you use him as trade bait in the future?
No, it's incredible trade value because somebody would want to trade in and get a fifth-round pick or a fifth-round option. Listen, that's not going to happen. I mean, I think Cam Ward's going to go 1-1.
Right.
Which actually means I think I should flip this around for you guys because you guys don't have the number 1 overall pick in the draft graded as a first-round selection in this draft.
I don't think Cam Ward is a surefire lock to be good.
I don't think he is either.
I think he's more in the Sam Darnold range, and I understand if I were a team that hadn't had quality quarterback play for years, I would take the shot. It's worth it. There are teams that did not have Patrick Mahomes up there in that first round. Footwork's a problem. The running, or what do they call it? The air raid offense. Nobody comes out of that and has success. All these different reasons they wouldn't have had him there because there were, what were at that time perceived as risks. And maybe I'll look back on it and say, man, I blew it with Cam Ward. Look at this. This guy's toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes. He beat him again in the AFC Championship game. I don't think so. I think Cam Ward will start for as long as he's the apple of someone's eye, as long as they're justifying the pick for their job. But I don't think he's going to be a franchise quarterback. I definitely don't know. Shedeur Sanders takes way too many sacks, gets hit way too much, is not big enough, I think, to take the pounding he's going to take. Dart, all the other guys have flaws just when it comes to their throwing game. So Ward would be the closest, but I don't think he's a definitive franchise quarterback, so I don't put him in round 1. Jeff, what's your thoughts?
I was told by the guy in the upper left-hand corner not to pick quarterbacks as part of this exercise. So,
well, I said we probably wouldn't be picking quarterbacks. Okay.
I give Cam Ward a first-round grade. Yeah, I would.
So if you're the Chiefs, and at 31 and he's there, are you going to take him?
Well, I think that's 2 different questions. I think you could have a first-round grade on a guy and not have a need to take him. There's a lot of guys that are going to have first-round grades they're not going to draft because they don't need them.
And right? I think they lose. I mean, I think it's I don't know. It's just arguing over semantics probably. But if you're not going to take him in the first round, then he's not a first rounder for your team, right? I get the town, but so you're convinced that he will be a franchise quarterback, or you're just convinced someone's going to take him. I know someone's going to take him. I'm not convinced he's going to end up being a legit NFL starting quarterback. Then you don't need to look at that position anymore.
I'm literally not convinced of any player. Like I wouldn't say definitively about any player on the list. Like I just don't view NFL uncertainty in those terms at all, especially with quarterbacks. Like I mean, there's been quarterbacks out that have been called surefire by everybody that haven't played out that way. So,
well, I'll disagree. Abdul Carter is going to play at a high level. I mean, I think that's about as close as there's been to a slam dunk. When you look at the explosion, what he does coming around the edge, what he did one-armed against people, that guy's a beast. So I will disagree. There are guys that I will say, barring an injury, they are going to be a star.
And you can't say barring injury. That's part of it, right?
Well, no, it's not. I mean, if you're a 164-pound wide receiver, I think that becomes a lot bigger part of it than when you fit the mold of what it is. But no, predicting injury, we're not talking about being Kreskin, but being more susceptible to injury. You've been hurt for 5 years in college, you're probably going to be hurt in the NFL. I mean, I think that weighs into it. But so you're not sure about Abdul Carter?
I would not put certainty around any NFL player in the draft. I just really wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't put it around any player in any league. I don't find certainty in sports. I think it's the absolute entertainment of it is that there is no certainty in it.
Yeah, I think first round grades to me, just based on my experience with scouts and GMs, it's always been about. You can always go back and say this guy should have been a first round pick. Look what he did in the NFL, but that's not to me how you determine if a guy's a first round pick, right? You're checking all these boxes and saying, is this guy, if we draft him, does he have the potential to do what we think he can do? And so for me, that's how I based my list off, was the idea of, has this guy shown enough as a college athlete through the testing process, through the pro days, to justify being a pick? And Cam Ward seems to have impressed enough people throughout the process to where that's not really a question. Shedeur Sanders is a different story.
I heard people 4 years ago say that Trevor Lawrence was the best prospect coming out since Peyton Manning. Yeah. He's not been a certainty in the NFL. I heard people last year say that.
No, he hasn't been Peyton Manning.
I heard people last year say compare Caleb Williams to having Patrick Mahomes traits. That's definitely. I think Caleb Williams will be a good quarterback. It's definitely not a certainty. These are guys who went 1-1. These are guys who have more talent than Cam Ward has. And look, I've got a first-round grade on Cam Ward. You're going to have to build an offense around his skill set. Like, he's not a guy that can plug in to any sort of offense. Like, you're going to have to do, to me, similar to what the Chiefs did late in the season with Patrick Mahomes, because theirs was because of their left tackle situation. This is more because the quarterback. I think you'll have to run heavy RPO. You'll have to get rid of the ball quickly. I don't think he's good when he sits around in the pocket for a while. Every quarterback, that's an adjustment. We saw the adjustment for Caleb Williams last year. You can't hold on to the ball for that length of time. And so I do think you're going to have to be pretty specific about the offense you build around him.
Right.
And I don't have him at 1-1. Like, he is definitely not the most talented player in the draft.
All right, let's talk running back. We all have Ashton Genty. However, Jeff and I add Omarion Hampton into this mix. Why do you like Hampton, Jeff, as a first rounder?
I think he's got a lot of buzz around him, and maybe I'm wrong for that. I'm more recency biased, but it seemed as if ever since the pre-draft process started, he's gotten a lot of hype around him, and he's a big guy. He runs hard. He's physical. He's probably a shorter version of Derrick Henry, that kind of back. Like, he's going to carry the load for you. He's going to be hard to bring down. And when you think about the way the run game is today, I think he fits all the, he doesn't have the production that Ashton Genty has, but I think in terms of ability level, I mean, he's not far away from him.
Maybe Matt is doing a fantasy draft and took a defensive player 10th overall.
You gotta like that. Yeah, I think Hampton's catching the ball out of the backfield. That ability is going to be what drives him up into the first round. I think he'll go in the first round. I think he's a first round talent. I don't want to take him, right? I don't want him to be there. But at 31, if he's there, we know there's not going to be many of the guys on our list that are there. And I think that may be the best player. It's not what any Chiefs fan wants to hear after living through the Clyde Edwards-Helaire world, right? But, I mean, I think that's the point of this exercise. How do you end up taking Clyde Edwards-Helaire? It's when all the other guys come off the board and you're there and you can't trade out. No one's coming up and you got to make a pick.
So
right?
you would the next day approve of that pick if they take the second best running back in the draft in the first round.
Listen, I explained what happened. I mean, I had a pretty good pulse on what was going on with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They were working on trading out that year. They wanted out. And when Jordan Love came off the board, when the Packers moved up ahead of where they were, no one was calling. And I think that was a scenario like this, 12, 15, however many they had. They were all gone on their first round picks, and they were stuck there at 32. Nobody was coming up anymore. It was the end of the night. Everybody had shut down. They had nowhere to trade down, and they had to make a pick. And they made the wrong pick. I mean, there's no way around it. But I'm just telling you, that's how it ended up. Now, I like Hampton more than I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire because he's a lot bigger. I think he's a more accomplished receiver. And he did it this year, not as part of some juggernaut offense where everything around him was the best in football. He had lost his quarterback, and he still averaged like 6 yards a carry. So I think he's the real deal as a running back. I won't love it. I'll probably hold my nose if I have to make that pick. But if he's the only guy sitting there at 31 and I had to take him, the Chiefs are a much better football team for taking him than they were before it. I mean, I'll say that. So it's not an ideal world, but it's one that I think he is a legit running back that is going to be franchise. But the injury factor plays in. I don't want to take any running back here. But I think he's more of a sure thing than, the sixth best defensive end. I'll say that.
It's curious to me just because you guys only have 20 and 21 respectively first round grades, and so you've got a running back.
19 for Jeff and 21.
Well, he actually has Cam Ward though, so he has 20 because he added Cam Ward. But and you've got 21, and you guys have 2 running backs on there. I think, look, Ashton Genty is I wonder what the Chiefs' offense would be like with a player like that. Also, don't think the Chiefs should pay anywhere near the price to find out what their offense would be like with that player. But I'm not saying they couldn't use a running back. First round running back. Not sure I'd be thrilled about it because, Soren, you mentioned it on Friday.
Well, that's my point. They were not thrilled when they took Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right? But you have to make a pick at 32.
Well,
you don't get to just shut it down and wait till the next day.
It doesn't have to be a running back. You don't have to take the next best running back on the board.
I said they got it wrong, but I'm telling you that's.
I'm not talking about Edwards-Helaire. I'm talking about this year.
Yes, and I've answered the question. You want me to repeat it? I would take Hampton. I would take Hampton over many players in this draft. I would not like it, but I have to make a pick at 31 when it goes up on the clock. We don't get a call a timeout and wait till the next day. Yes, I would make that pick.
And again, you don't have to pick a running back. You have every other position to choose from is my point.
Okay. Wide receiver. We all have McMillan and Golden. McMillan of Arizona State, Golden of Texas. I've got 2 more. I've got Egbuka from Ohio State and Luther Burden from Missouri. Luther Burden's of note because more and more you're seeing him in the second round. He was a guy that was up there around 10 or 12 when the draft process began. And now Luther Burden is a guy that's consistently into the second round. I'm wondering what everybody has stalled on Luther Burden. I think he had okay quarterback play, but I see a guy who has run after the catch ability. I see a guy who gets open. I like Luther Burden, and I see him as a guy who looks like what the Chiefs like at wide receiver. So I think he's a good fit for the Chiefs. So I think he's a first-round talent. I think Egbuka, if we're basing it on what's really going to happen, there's no way he's not going in the first round. So I've got all 4 of those wideouts in there, and I think they're all going to be – they're all quality prospects, right? Like you said, there's risk with everybody that's in there. But the guy who's fallen more than Egbuka is McMillan on most of the predictions. I think Burden looks like a Chief, and I think, Egbuka is the kind of guy that can do something after the catch. I like them. Jeff, why don't you have them on your list?
Burden had a down year. I don't think he really came on strong in his final year at Missouri, which to me is it's not a red flag, but I think it's an easy way to say, if he didn't blow it up in the way McMillan or Golden did in their last couple of years, and Golden had phenomenal times at the 40 at the combine, so that helps him out a lot. And Egbuka, I've watched him a lot throughout his career. He's a slot guy. He's competent. I don't think he's going to be a star. I don't think to me, that's the difference with him. He's not on the level of Marvin Harrison Jr. or Garrett Wilson. Some of these guys who've come out who've been high top 10 picks. I think he could easily be a second-round pick, and nobody would be upset about that. So, and you look at his numbers too. I think he was outshined by a freshman last year.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but that's kind of the way at Ohio State. Like you are getting, like you could be a first round talent and still be the second best guy on Ohio State. They've had, that's all they do is produce first round wideouts. So that's the one school, that and LSU, where it may be in the worst thing in the world to be the second best wide receiver. Justin Jefferson was the second best wide receiver on his college team.
Yeah. I don't think Egbuka's numbers were that strong either, though. I think if you look at his numbers, did he crack 1,000 yards?
I'd have to go back to
last year. I think he didn't have a lot of big games in his final year.
I think he may have not done it this year, but did it last year, if I'm not mistaken. That might have been part of the equation. If it's a business that you own and a parking lot that you need fixed, the part of the equation you need to remember is Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait, get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222 or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. All right, let's pick up some steam here. Tight end. I think we're all in agreement. We've got two guys there. Ty Warren from Penn State, Colston Loveland from Michigan. Anybody even come close to cracking that? Is anyone else? And how much do you think the Chiefs would covet either one of these guys, Sam?
Yeah, I think the biggest question in the Chiefs draft, I would encourage people to try out the PFF mock draft tool. And the most interesting question you'll face is about 1 out of every 3 drafts, you'll be left with a decision on Colston Loveland at 31 in that mock draft. And that could happen. I think Colston Loveland is a top 10 talent. And like not top 5, but I think he's a 9 to 12 top pick. And I think because he had a shoulder injury and terrible quarterback play last year, that he's fallen on some boards. And I think he's the better tight end between him and Tyler Warren. I like his overall body of work at Michigan better. I like Tyler Warren. I'm not nearly as high on him as a lot of people are. I mean, I think he had 600 yards in his first 4 college seasons before his breakout year with Kotelnicki, who came over from KU and reshaped Penn State's offense. I wonder what pick he would be if Kotelnicki had not made that jump to Penn State. But to me, Colston Loveland should be the first tight end off the board. And like I said, I think it's the most intriguing question for the Chiefs in this draft could be, what do you do at 31 if Colston Loveland's sitting there? And my answer is I take him, because I do think it's Travis Kelce's last year. I'm not drafting for just this year. I'm drafting for potentially 5 years, and I'm getting a first-round talent at 31, which I do not expect the Chiefs to be able to do otherwise.
All right, let's talk about offensive tackle. 3 of them we're the same on. Will Campbell of LSU, Armand Membu of Missouri, and Kelvin Banks of Texas. We all 3 have. The difference is Jeff and I also add in Josh Simmons. Jeff, obviously we're assuming the medical reports are good, right? Like that. Yeah. That's the assumption here. We know we can't, but by putting him on here, when you see him listed in places, that's where we're going. I assume it's the medical that has Sam leaving him off the board.
Yeah.
If he had clear medical, or is it, anyone who takes him is obviously going to feel that he's going to be healthy. Yeah. And it comes down to that, right? And is it just I'm not taking anybody who's currently hurt?
Yeah, the teams wouldn't draft him if they're not privy to the medical information on him, and so therefore I didn't feel comfortable putting up there either without being privy to that information. If he's got a clean bill of health and the Chiefs have him for a clean bill of health, I'd put a first-round grade on him.
Jeff, I think he's the best offensive tackle in the class as far as the physical attributes along with the production if he's healthy, and I think that makes him an intriguing guy for the Chiefs, because this is the only way you get legit left tackles. Got to have some kind of flaw, or you've got to trade way up to get him. And I think there's a reason why people keep putting Josh Simmons next to the Chiefs' name.
Yeah, but again, I think we talked about this last week, that it's either, if he's falling that far, it's either the medicals aren't good or something else went wrong. It's not going to be because they just got lucky. Like, he's a talented enough player that he would go in 25 or higher. Like, maybe even 20 or higher. I don't know if he would even be within reach of them trading up for reasonable compensation. He reminds me a lot of the receiver that the Lions took, Jameson Williams, when he came out, because you remember he blew his knee out in the championship game when they drafted him, I think 12th overall that year, and he ended up playing late in the year. But for them, it was worth it because he was that talented of a player. I think Simmons is a tackle is in the same boat. To me, he's the purest offensive tackle in the draft. Some of these guys are going to end up being guards.
So that's interesting. I'll ask you guys then, because the only reason I didn't have him was the medicals. Would you guys take him if the medicals showed that he's not going to be ready to play at the start of the season, but long term,
Yes.
long term, he'll
Yes.
be in that
Yes.
shape.
It's the only way the Chiefs get a real left tackle. They're going to
Yeah.
have to do something like this, and he's a better risk than Kingsley Suamati is in the second round because he has played at a very high level. He
Yeah.
has played NFL caliber football at tackle. So yes, I am, and that's why I do have him in the first round. And I think the Chiefs would really like to get him. And so if he's there, I think it'll be tough for them to pass on him. Sam and I don't have a guard or a center. Jeff, you don't have a center, but you do have Tyler Booker at guard. He's projected first, second round. Why do you like him in the first round?
I've heard scouts talk highly of him. He's a pure guard. He's a true guard. He's a massive guard. He's 6'5", 320. I think he's All-American. All the things you hear about guys like him. To me, it's more recency bias and just people I've heard talk about him. Like he's a guy who people like a lot.
Yeah, and I think for good reason as well. He is very good. Question is kind of like Sam badgering me about the running back. You're gonna take a guard in the first round? You take a guard in the first round? I mean,
well,
that's
what these tackles are going to be guards.
Well,
right. But I agree.
Yeah.
Would you take him though, Jeff, if you're the Chiefs and he's there?
I would not take him again because to me, I don't look at it like I don't think GMs draft just off. Oh, my board says this is the best player. We got to take him. I think you look at what you have need wise, and you say, all right, does this guy fit? If not, then we'll move on to the next person.
I think if Cam Ward is on your Chiefs board, then you're putting guys up there that you're not going to take. Then having Booker and having running backs and that. I mean, again, it's a battle of semantics on what it is. But the Chiefs aren't going to take Cam Ward unless you think they will. I think if he's at 31, they would be panicked. Like, what the hell don't we know? And they still wouldn't take him, even though it'd be like, hey, let's take him, play him in the preseason. We'll flip him for multiple picks down the road. We'll get more from him. Then we'll get more value than 31. That sounds great. When it came right down to it, I don't think there's any chance they would take him.
No, they haven't scouted him. I mean, they haven't done their homework.
I agree. That's why I don't think he's a first rounder on their board. So let's talk about edge. That is a place that they need. Abdul Carter, a distinct maybe in the eyes of Sam McDowell. I think he's going to be badass in the NFL. We all have him. Jalen Walker of Georgia. We've all got him. Let's see. You guys, is that where we end? Yeah. You guys then have Michael Williams of Georgia. I don't. James Pierce for Tennessee. Jeff, you've got him. And then Mike Green, both Sam and I have. And I've got Shamar Stewart of Texas A&M as well on the edge. So we've all got 4, but we get there differently. So we don't need to really talk about Jalen Walker or Abdul Carter. They're probably going to be the first 2 off the board. Sam, Michael Williams and Mike Green. Why are those 2 on the first round grade for you?
Well, I mean, Mike Green just had a ridiculous year. I mean, he had 56 pressures, 7 sacks. Yeah, he's got great speed. Michael Williams, I think I definitely have some questions on. I'd like to see him, be in the backfield at a higher rate. I think what's most interesting on this list that you just mentioned among all of us is everybody has Shamar Stewart, I think, going in the first round. I mean, I think I mentioned that grinding the mocks, and it's frozen on me right now. Oh, it's got him at 15 is his average draft position. He's never had more than 1.5 sacks in a college season as an edge player. He didn't even have that many pressures. I guess I don't evaluate that. He is only 21. He does have great size. He's 6'5". I don't think I'm a good enough scout to say this can be a first round grade for me based on the actual performance on the field. You're definitely drafting tools in that sense. So I think that's the most interesting name among this group for edge rushers.
Yeah, and I'm the guy.
That was your guy, yeah.
That was my guy, and it's because he does, like you said, he checks every box. 6'5", 267, arm length well over almost 35 inches long. Young, you've pointed that out, how much they love the young guys. He's under 22 years old, not even 21 and a half years old yet. He looks like their kind of guy. He looks like a Steve Spagnuolo guy to me, and that's why I think if he's there, they will take him because he is, I think 4'5", 940. As well,
and I don't even think he will be there. Like I think he'll be long gone by then.
But I think the raw talent gets him. I think you're getting this is. I'd have to go back and look. How far is he off from what was the guy the Jags took first 2 years ago?
Trayvon Walker.
Yeah, I mean, he's not far from that. And Trayvon Walker, I mean, I wouldn't take him 1-1. We're talking about a pick 31 for the Chiefs. I wouldn't take this kid 1-1. And that's kind of what they did, Jacksonville. They loved the 10-yard, and they had a couple of little metrics that they jumped on him. And I think this kid's going to check those boxes as well, and that's why he's going to go that high. So I do like him there as a guy. And I think Michael Williams is just a kind of flawed same way. I don't think he looks like a Spagnuolo guy.
Yeah, and look, I would take Stewart if he's there at 31. But in this exercise of first round grades, like I said, I don't think I'm a good enough just like with my eyes as a football scout to say based on that production he had in college, I could put him as a first round grade.
D tackle, we've all got Mason Graham. Sam, you and I add Derek Harmon. You kind of talked about Derek Harmon on the last podcast about the kind of pass rusher that he is. I do like him, and I've seen him going in the top 20 in some mock drafts here of late. Jeff, why? Because since Sam did a nice job on him last podcast about going for him, is there a reason why only one, whether it's Harmon or anybody else? The other Michigan, I thought you might have two Michigan guys on this list for
Kenneth Grant.
Yeah. Well, I was at Michigan's pro day, and so it just seemed like everybody was talking about Mason Graham like he was in a class of his own, and there wasn't another defensive tackle coming up in conversation that was close to him. So, including Kenneth Grant, who was there working out. Mason Graham just did all the positional drills. Kenneth Grant did the vertical, ran the 40, did the bench press, all that stuff. And he's a freak of nature. I mean, he's like six.
I like that IQ. Don't work out next to Mason Graham. That's a smart guy.
That's right. But he's like 340, and he had like a 31-inch vertical, and his 10-second split was pretty strong, but not nearly as consistent of a player. I don't know Harmon as well. Just going off the vibe I was getting was that Mason Graham was the king of the defensive tackles in that.
I think you're right about that.
Usually you hear people saying, "Oh yeah, this Harmon kid looks pretty good," or this other guy. It's like nobody was in the conversation with him.
I think this one really depends on, does somebody light the fire on the D tackles and the teams? And if they do, they might come off the boards. If they don't, if they slide past there and get to the 20s, then I think they might start dropping down. I mean, I think that I'd have to go back and look if that's what happened with Chris Jones, why he was there in the second round. I think it'd be interesting because I think we could see a scenario where Mason Graham, Derek Harmon of Oregon, Kenneth Grant of Michigan, and Walter Nolan of Ole Miss all go before the Chiefs ever get near the podium, right? I think there's a chance that 4 of these defensive tackles will go. We've talked about how deep this defensive line class is, and I think you could see a bunch of them go, but I've got 2 of them there. None of us have linebackers except you, Jeff. You've got Jahad Campbell. Everybody's got him going in the first round. You think he'd be a good fit for the Chiefs?
That's a different question.
Okay.
I didn't look. I didn't think it'll be a first round pick. I think you should have a first round grade on him. I don't think he's a perfect fit for what they have right now because obviously they have re-signed both their linebackers from the last couple of years. But no, I think I know Lance Zierlein, who we're going to use his mock draft for this exercise, thought highly of him. And again, other people I've seen talking about inside linebackers who need inside linebackers, like the Buccaneers, for example. There's a lot of buzz about this guy as being a can't-miss player. So for me, it was just he's athletic. He's an Alabama guy. He's a first-round grade in my mind.
Okay. All right. And he's going to go in the first round. I think we all think he's going to go in the first round for sure. Cornerback. All right. We've all got Travis Hunter. We've all got Will Johnson of Michigan. Both. And this is interesting, Sam. I was kind of surprised to see you have him. Jahdae Barron of Texas, because he is a little bit older, right? If I'm not mistaken, isn't he up there at 23? But most mock drafts have him going in the top 20. Why do you like him? And then, Jeff, why don't you? Sam, what do you like?
Yeah, I actually don't know that either the Travis Hunter will fit any system. I don't know that the other 2 cornerbacks would really fit the Chiefs that well. Will Johnson is a heavy zone cornerback. He's not going to run that fast, I don't think. So I don't know that. I think other teams he could fit better than he would in Steve Spagnuolo's system. And Barron is a guy, he just can play so many places. I do think Steve Spagnuolo could have some fun with that one. I mean, he is what they try to make Shamari Connor out to be. I think he could fit that role really well.
I agree. That's kind of where I see him as well. And then no safeties, right? We don't any of us see a safety there.
No, the South Carolina kid will go in the first round.
Yeah, Emin Worry.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that he will.
I mean, maybe Malachi Starks from Georgia got shot.
There's a couple of names that you see in there, but I'm not sure. I think if the defensive lines start going, and if everybody views the offensive tackles, if they think those guys are tackles, or they think there's only a couple of them, and I think somebody's going to like Simmons and somebody else is going to like Connolly. I think they're going to have different guys. If they're like, I got to get my guy, he's the last guy. If they start grabbing those, I think that could push the safeties down. I think we're going to be intrigued by some guys that were consistently mocked into the late teens and early 20s that are sitting there at 38, 39, 40, wondering what's going on. I think it's going to be that kind of night a week from Thursday.
Yeah. The thing about safeties that's interesting is there's only really 2, maybe 3 that go in the first 2 rounds overall. Yeah. So I think the absence of depth at that position could prompt somebody to take them in the first round.
All right, that is our big board again, just so we're clear. 19, excuse me, for Jeff. I'm going to leave Cam Ward out just because I have 19 written everywhere on these spreadsheets. So 19 for Jeff, 18 for Sam, 21 for me. Those are our first-round big boards. We'll now plug them into a mock draft, see how they start coming off and where the Chiefs might start thinking about moving up. We'll do that next after you hear from our friends at Besame Wellness.
Besame Wellness for all your cannabis needs. With fast, easy, and discreet delivery, you can enjoy the same deals you enjoy in-store, but delivered to your home or office. Even same day. Restrictions may apply. Any questions? Let Besame's top-rated customer service team assist you. And this Chief season, don't miss a minute of the game with no delivery fees on game days. And when the home team wins, so do you. Use promo code 3PEAT and receive some extra free goodies with your next Besame order. Don't forget, you can still use promo code podcast25 to save 25% on your entire order for online delivery or at any of their 5 area Besame locations.
Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, let's get going here on the mock draft. And we took Lance Zierlein from NFL.com. I've talked to Lance for a long, long time. It's been a while since I've talked to him. We used to have him on all the time as he was ascending up to the incredible levels that he has now of NFL.com and the likes of Jeff Chadiha out there. We took his mock draft, and it really doesn't matter who you do this for. And I would encourage everybody, just like Sam said, hey, take a look at that PFF and just do it. You can learn something. I think, figure out your first round picks and then take a mock draft and see where they start coming off and see who you have left. See where it's like, ooh, boy, it's at this pick that I'm down to 3 guys. Like now I'm starting to get antsy and looking at moving up, and you can see kind of the thoughts that are going through the head of Brett Veach and why he's moved so many different times. Lance opens up with Cam Ward, quarterback to the Titans, Abdul Carter, edge rusher to the Browns, Travis Hunter from Colorado to the Giants, Will Campbell, offensive tackle LSU to the Patriots, and Mason Graham, defensive tackle of Michigan to Jaguars. That's pretty standard, right, for where we're settling into right now on what the expectations are. So we've got those 5 coming out. Starting at 6, Raiders taking Jalen Walker from Georgia, the edge rusher. Armand Membu from Mizzou goes 7 to the Jets. Carolina takes Michael Williams, edge rusher from Georgia. New Orleans takes Jihad Campbell, linebacker from Alabama. That's a little bit different than what you see most places. Most places have Shedeur Sanders going in this spot, but I think that's why it's kind of good to grab these because something's going to happen that you're not expecting. How does it change things, and how do you pivot when it does happen? So I think this is a good one, and I think Lance is pretty wired in, so who knows? We'll see where he ends up going. But then number 10, Ashton Genty to the Chicago Bears. So, through 9. We'll leave Genty on the board, but through 9. We went with 10 because the Chiefs traded up to Patrick Mahomes. We've seen them make that kind of move. We know what it is. Through 10 picks, right? Still on the board. Jeff, you've lost 8 of your 19 guys. Sam, you have lost 8 of your 18 guys. I've lost 6 of my 21 guys.
So there's 3 of those players that go in his top 9 that you don't have as a first round grade.
Yeah, I don't have Cam Ward. I don't have Michael
Cam-
Williams.
and Campbell.
And I don't have Jihad Campbell. So I don't have those 3. So for me, and I think that's how it will be for these teams. I think there are guys that everyone thinks are a consensus that there's some teams that are like, he's got a medical, or we heard he did, this or that when he was back home. And they'll be off teams' boards that, you don't realize it. And that's why, it spikes really fast. I can't stress how it's coming down like this. And then it starts going in different directions as to, how the teams view things. But where's your antsiness, Sam? You like to quote about how Brett Veach loves to move up. I know you talk about 5th and 6th round, those big holes that he's likely to move in there. But how likely is he to be thinking in terms of the 27-10 jump? Is there somebody left on your board that you're like, this is a guy that he's going to think long and hard about what it would cost to get this done?
No, there's no players in the draft that get at 10 because if Abdul Carter, for example, is available, there's something wrong that we don't know. So there's no players in this draft that I think he would consider moving up to 10 for.
Okay. How about you? Are you at all antsy at this point if you're Brett Veach?
I'm in the same boat. I mean, what they give up to go to 10, 2 first-round picks, the first and the third. Right. Yeah, I mean, that was when they were drafted in 27, 28?
Right.
So, coming from 31 to 10. Yeah, 31 to 10, there's nobody in this draft worth giving up that kind of compensation for.
Okay. So through 10, not making a move, standing pat. We move on. The draft starts coming off. 10, Ashton Genty to the Bears. 11 is Kelvin Banks, offensive tackle from Texas to the Niners. Matthew Golden, wideout, Texas to the Cowboys. Kenneth Grand, defensive tackle from Michigan, going to the Dolphins. 14, Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State. At 15, anybody getting tempted right now? No? I'll keep going to 20 because that's about where McDuffie went. Will Johnson goes 15, cornerback Michigan to the Falcons. 16, Tyler Booker, guard Alabama, goes to Arizona. Mike Green, edge rusher from Marshall, goes 17 to the Bengals. I think there'd be some groans at that point in the Chiefs room. Ted McMillan, wideout Arizona, goes 18 to the Seahawks. Shamar Stewart, edge rusher from A&M, goes 19 to Tampa Bay. And then 20, the Denver Broncos are on the clock. Is there anybody you're tempted at this point when we get to pick number 20 on the big boards? You have now lost 15 of your 19, Jeff. The only guys that you've graded as first-round picks that are still on your board, Omarion Hampton, running back from North Carolina, Colston Loveland, tight end from Michigan, Josh Simmons, offensive tackle from Ohio State, and James Pierce, edge rusher from Tennessee, are at 20. Are you starting to get antsy?
Simmons would be interesting at that point. I think Loveland's going to go to the Chargers. So I don't know. I think the only player I'm trading up for would be an offensive tackle. And if Simmons is dropping that far, is still on the board at that point, it's appealing. But again, I think anybody you're dealing with that spot knows what you want and probably wants a king's ransom for you to come up and get it. And I don't think he's worth that kind of compensation to do that.
Yeah, I think you're looking at probably, if you look at some of the trade charts, you're looking at having to give that high 3rd round pick, right? Or you're going to give the low 3rd round pick and maybe have to throw one of your other lower picks back. Maybe you're throwing that 4th from next year that you got back at him.
And there's other people calling about him too.
Yeah, I think it's not that difficult to answer this question because they did trade up to, 21 to get McDuffie, and they gave up 29. So this would be a bigger gap going from 31 to 20 as a 29 to 21. And they gave up a 3rd and a 4th in addition to that.
I think they got a lower pick back maybe as well. But yeah, I mean, there are different trade charts that are out there and you can use them. And that's something that you can look for. I'm looking at one of them right now. There's the old Jimmy Johnson chart, which is pretty outdated. I will say this. I think the trade ups at the bottom of round 1 have been cheaper in recent years than they used to be. Right? Like last year, guys, they were moving up 6, 7, 8 spots and giving up 3rds And I think it was because everyone's like, okay, all the real firsts are gone. We don't really care. Just give me any pick, and I'm moving back. And so I think it'll depend. I don't know that the depth of defensive linemen, which are hard to come by, big people are always hard to find. I think it'll be interesting to see if it carries that same kind of weight. Sam, are you getting antsy if you're Brett Veach? Is Brett Veach, more importantly, getting antsy at this point if he looks at what's left on your board? What's left on your board, if you're running the show, is Colston Loveland, Derek Harmon, defensive tackle from Oregon, and Jahdae Barron from Texas. That's it. You've only got 3 guys left as first rounders, or is now when you start to ring the phones about moving down.
Yeah, when you asked if Brett Veach is getting antsy, Brett Veach will be antsy on like pick 2 of this first round. So, but I would not be at all. I would not be looking to move up this high.
Okay,
Yeah,
so even with 3 guys, you're not starting to think that these are truly.
No.
Yeah, I saw a thing that Howie Roseman was saying at his press conference, his draft press conference, because he's pretty aggressive too when it comes to making trades. And he said, you know what, he's aggressive by nature, but there's also time when you look back and say, who did I get in that spot? Who went in that spot that I gave up? And I could have got that guy without doing all this stuff. Like you have those moments where you make those moves and it sounds sexy, but you could have got the guy without giving up anything that you wanted.
I think we're all in agreement. I think we're all the types that are looking to move down, get more picks. We don't see one guy over the other, but that's not how Brett Veach operates, right? He falls in love with guys.
No.
And the question is, he was trying hard to get up against Zay Flowers. Couldn't get it done, but he was trying. He wanted to do it. Even in years where he hasn't moved up, he tried, just wasn't able to get it done. And the question is he going to be trying here? I think the guy that starts to become interesting, and on my board, I've got a few more guys left here at 20. I'm at 14 and 21 gone. So I've got 7 players. I've got Jahdae Barron, Derek Harmon, D tackle of Oregon, Josh Simmons, offensive tackle from Ohio State, Colston Loveland, Michigan, the 2 wideouts you guys didn't have, Luther Burden and Egbuka, and then Omarion Hampton, the running back. The guys I'm starting to get excited, like, okay, is Josh Simmons or Derek Harmon going to make it to me? I want to get better in the trenches. I'm worried about Chris Jones getting older. I like the idea of landing one of those 2 guys. And I think that's where you find out, do they really see somebody as a left tackle for the future? And I think this is a spot where they could be looking to make a move. And I wouldn't do it for a hurt guy, right? So I wouldn't make this move here, but I do think Derek Harmon's pretty intriguing. And, I remember when the Chiefs took Larry Johnson. What people don't remember is that they had 16. And the best guy on their board was Larry Johnson. They were ready to take him, and Dick Vermeil wanted a defensive guy. And Carl Peterson said, all right, I'm going to trade out of here. I'm going to move back down so I don't have to deal with this crap because I've got the defensive guys and Dick wanting to get a guy. All my scouts are saying take Larry Johnson. We're trading down. So they trade out of 16. By the way, the Steelers take Troy Polamalu. Chiefs did have Jerome Woods and Reggie Tung and I think Greg Wesley at safety. So safety was a spot that they weren't looking at all. But they moved down. They moved down to 27. And lo and behold, Larry Johnson's still there, right? And so they ultimately ended up taking Larry Johnson with that pick. He's like, I'm all right. He's still there. I'm not going to do it. But I think that might happen in this situation where they're like, whether they really love a defensive lineman, in this case, like what we've got on our board, Derek Harmon, they're starting to talk about it right now. If they let him go and move on, let's play it out for 5 more picks. We'll take it down to 25. Omarion Hampton goes 20 to the Broncos. Jahdae Brown goes 21 to the Rams. So we're getting a couple of guys off the board that were on our first-round pick. Colston Loveland's now gone at 22. This was the spot, it's looking like, in here where you're going to have to come up to get some of the guys we had on our board. Siobhan Revel, a cornerback from East Carolina, goes 23. Shedeur Sanders finally goes 24 to Cleveland, and now you're up at 25. Sam at 25. Are you out? Are you done? No, you've got 1 guy left. You got Derek Harmon at 25. Jeff, you have James Pierce, edge rusher from Tennessee, and Josh Simmons. I've got the wideouts, Simmons and Harmon left on my board. Anybody tempted to move up here? Pretty cheap to get up in this range. Sam, what about now? Does Beach look at?
I don't think it would be cheap. So my answer is still no. But I do think around 26-ish, I think, is if Veach has identified a guy who he still likes. And look, Derek Harmon falls to 31 when you project out that PFF mock draft, he falls to 31 a decent amount, and his average spot is 27, and that 27 range, 26, 27 range, I think could be about where Brett Veach is making some calls. If there's still a guy who he likes and he's in this exact situation, I've only got so many first round grades, and one of them's there. The interesting thing is 26, the Rams, they'll probably make a deal with you. I don't know if the Texans would. 27, the Ravens, probably not. The Lions at 28, Washington at 29, the Bills at 30, and I think people would say probably not the Bills. They traded with the Chiefs last year. The Bills, to their total credit, are looking to do what's best for their organization. I'm not sure every AFC contending team is there.
95 would get it done. So the low third by one of the trade chart that I'm looking at, let's say it's the Chiefs trade chart, that would be enough. That and 31 to move up would get you to 25 to take someone here if you wanted to do it. I mean, I think I think we've entered the area right here where they're looking at doing something. And if they're going to go, I think
for Josh Simmons. For who?
Josh Simmons, if there's a defensive lineman that they love, in my case, in the way we're playing it out here with the board that I've put up there, we're talking about, Derek.
Are you saying what you would do or what you think the Chiefs will do? Because I think we all agree the Chiefs are going to be looking at this. But are you saying what you would do here?
I'm saying what the Chiefs would do here based upon their board being my board.
So you've got 25, for example, and you've got the two wide receivers that Jeff and I did not put on our list.
And I'm not going up for them. It's Josh Simmons and Derek Harmon that I'm eyeing to move up for. If I'm stuck at 31 and I can't move out, then I'm probably going to take one of those wideouts.
All your edge guys are gone, right?
My edge guys are all off the board. I don't have an edge guy.
I still have Pierce.
You've got Pierce, and that's why I'm wondering, is that where you'd be itching to make a move?
I would not be as itchy about that because I feel like there will be other guys there who may not be first round grade guys, but probably could still be good players for me. And so I'm not as concerned about, we have Landon Jackson's a name we've thrown out before from Arkansas. Nick Scorton was a guy that I mentioned in our last mock draft. I think you're going to have options there at 31 if James Pierce somehow disappears within the next 3 picks or next 6 picks.
Yeah. By the way, I love Temecula. He says, I think Brett Veach does move up. Come on. We talk about it year after year trading back, but it's just not how he's wired. He even admitted it to you. He did. I mean, I gave him a Final Four, trade up or trade down. He's like, come on, trade up. It's what I do. And I agree. And that's why I'm like, that's the point of the exercise, is to figure out, okay, what is going to be his mindset and who are the types of guys he's going to be looking at and who are the names that are going to be interesting to watch. Okay, this guy's still here. He's still here. He's still here. When does he pop, or does he think he can get him at 31?
Yeah, but we also don't know, would someone trade up to get Simmons when the draft actually happens, right? I mean, the Chiefs aren't the only people making calls, right?
Sure.
Right? Yeah. So that compensation is affected by that. And so, yeah, but I think if he's sitting around there at 25, 26, I certainly think Veach will be very aggressive about going to get someone like that, because that's the only one who can really make a huge difference on this team beyond this year.
All right, the last 5 picks before the Chiefs, last 6 picks actually, with the mock draft from Lance Zierlein. Donovan Jackson, guard, Ohio State, goes 25 to Houston. None of us had him. Derek Harmon finally goes 26 to the Steelers. Nick Emenworry, safety from South Carolina, goes 27 to Baltimore. Josh Connerly Jr., offensive tackle from Oregon, a guy that we're seeing written next to the Chiefs' name a lot here lately. He goes 28 to the Lions. Trey Amos, cornerback, Ole Miss, goes 29. And Donovan Izuruakua, it's my best guess at it, the edge from Boston College, goes 30 to Buffalo, which means as we sit here now at pick number 31, Jeff, you have Josh Simmons still on the board, and you have James Pierce on the board from your first-round grades. Sam, you're tapped out. There's nobody left from your first-round grades. I've got Egbuka, Luther Burden III, and Josh Simmons left. Those are the 3 guys that are on my board. Let's take Jeff and I off the board because we're the easiest one. Sam in a scramble mode here is going to be, I think, the interesting one to play out. What are you doing, Jeff? You're on the clock, 31. What do you do if you're Brett Veach?
Oh, Josh Simmons. Josh Simmons is sitting there. Then it's an easy choice, with the injury or not. If he does have red flags around him, you can work with it. You've got an option in place.
Are you trying to trade down, or no? Are you thrilled?
Oh, I'd take him there. No, I'd take him there. Oh, I'd take him there. Yeah, I would not trade back at that point. I think you're filling a huge need potentially with this. But maybe your best shot in the next couple of years to do that. I don't think you pass that up if you're Brett Veach.
When we get done with this, I've got to record my reason for taking at pick 31, who I did in the ESPN radio mock draft. I have the Chiefs pick at 31, and it worked out similar to this. Josh Simmons was there. It was pretty similar to what Lance's board came around, and we can't trade down or do anything like that. I think first and foremost, you look to trade down. I think Sam talked about it in our last podcast. I think there's a lot of names that you like right now still. And if you don't have Josh Simmons, like if you're in Sam's boat, it gets real interesting because you got a lot of names I think you're really trying to trade down. For me, our medical staff has said he's okay, that it's progressing the way you want. We think he's going to be there. I'm thrilled to take Josh Simmons. I get what I think is the best left tackle in football. There's risk, but there's going to have to be risk to get a legit left tackle. If we get it right, we nail it, and we've solved left tackle for 2 contracts, we're in a great spot. So I go ahead and I take Josh Simmons right here, and I don't think they'll look to trade down. I think they'll be happy to take Josh Simmons. That gets us to you, Sam. All your first-round grades are gone. You're trying like hell to move down and get picks. You can't do it. There's nothing there. Where are you going?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I remembered all 30 picks that have gone in front of me.
You got a spreadsheet that has them.
I just have this spreadsheet of the guys gone, right? Not the full 31.
It's on the second tab is the whole 30 that went in front of you. Chiefs.
I think look, Walter Nolan's still available, right? From Ole Miss. Jeff's guy, Nick Skirton, who I like as well. I'm surprised Josh Connerly's gone. Obviously Luther Burden's still there. And Ariante Ursery's still there. I think he more falls into the mid 40s in a weird spot that the Chiefs don't have a pick. And it's another reason why I think you could trade back and still get a player like that who could be your starting left tackle. But I'm probably going with among these options, I'd probably go with Walter Nolan.
Walter Nolan.
Yeah.
Okay. You wouldn't trade back.
I would trade back, yes.
Okay.
Because those guys I just mentioned, like if I can get Ursery at 40, at 30, you're not trading back to 40. You're most likely trading back to 36, 37, and potentially picking up a 4th round pick, maybe a 5th, and an exchange of 6, something like that. Like I kind of like that spot because I just mentioned 5 guys that I feel quite similarly about, I think.
Yeah. So at this point, you think they take the best defensive lineman that's there? And are you regretting that you didn't move up?
No, I think that the guy that I would be that draft has Josh Simmons falling. I think of the guys who I graded from the 18 players, the most likely scenario of if you told me one of those guys is going to fall, I would say it'd be Harmon. And that Harmon would be the guy that you're potentially hoping falls into your lap. He's who in the mock draft we did last Friday, he's who I pegged. And grinding the mocks has him going 28 on these average mock drafts.
Yeah, I just think guys that are 330 pounds and can put pressure on the quarterback are you just don't find those guys very often. And
I agree.
So I think he's going to go a lot higher than people think. I think having him, where did Lance have him going for you guys? Jeff, he had him
like 27.
He had him at 26. I mean, I've seen him up at I've seen him. He had 26 of the Steelers, but I saw him as high as where was he on? Let me look at that here. I've got the Kuiper one pulled up. He went really high. Kuiper and Field Yates. He went. Walter Nolan went 17 to the Bengals. Maybe I'm getting confused with that. Maybe that's where I was thinking. Walter Nolan went 17 to the Bengals, and then where did they have Derek Harmon? They had Derek Harmon going 21 to the Steelers.
21.
Yeah. So it's like that's the thing is we plug this in. Okay, let's take that mock draft and do it, and have the board go differently. And I think we come up with something totally different, right? And that's the thing. I think you run the draft back as soon as it's done and start it over with everybody armed with what they saw. They start doing things a little bit different, and it goes in an entirely different direction.
The top so there's another website that does this NFL mock draft database, and shout out to Nick Jacobs for 41 had introduced me to this. And it has the most common players who could drop out of the first round are Mykel Williams, Malachi Starks, and Derek Harmon. So Mykel Williams and Derek Harmon.
Who are they again?
It's Mykel Williams, Malachi Starks, and Derek Harmon. And Tyler Booker. And you could like Mykel Williams versus Derek Harmon, I think that'd be a pretty fascinating decision for the Chiefs. I've rated both those guys, as first round grades. I do think that Derek Harmon playing next to Chris Jones would be really tough on opposing quarterbacks. I mean, I mentioned the fact that he had like 11 more pressures from the interior than any other player in D1, but it's going to be fascinating because I do think there is a cutoff, and those two guys were my most borderline guys for giving the first round. There are lots that I barely missed out on, but those were the last two in for me.
Yeah, no, I think I do think it's going to be pretty volatile. I think don't you agree? We're going to see some things we're not expecting.
Happens every year.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
I mean, I think some kind of drastic ones. I think this is going to be a fun draft. I think it's going to be like, oh, this guy went
Jackson Dart, like going like 10th overall, something like that. I mean,
even the Louisville quarterback, people have creeping into the like low 30s now. And if you get that, if you're going there, why not pop up and take him at 30, 31, 32? Like, I think that's the dream scenario for the Chiefs is if somebody wants that 5th-year shot, they're like, hey, we like Dart. We like, what's the Louisville quarterback's name? Tyler Shaw or Schuff or whatever it is, Shough. They got him. Kuiper's got him going 34 to the Giants. Like, if you're there, wouldn't you want that 5th year? I mean, I think if you're taking him, you want that first year apprenticeship year where he's on the bench and watching. And so that means you're going to have less time to make your decision. So I think you would want that 5th-year option. I think that's the dream scenario for the Chiefs is if there's multiple teams wanting to come up. If Jackson Dart would go as high as some people are saying, there's some people saying that he's going to go ahead of Shedeur Sanders. And if that happens, Sanders falls. In this case, Lance has him going at 24. I've seen him going 21 to the Steelers. If that happens, and then there's a 4th quarterback and there's multiple teams that want him, get a little bit of a bidding war, you get the best price to move down. That's the dream scenario if you're the Chiefs, I think.
Shedeur's going to whatever happened with Shedeur, that's going to be the turning point in the draft, right? He gets past 9, and all of a sudden things get crazy.
Yeah. I agree.
The big board on this website, this is the first time I checked it out, so I'm kind of checking it out in real time, and I think it's evidence for why, like at the draft, I'll read off some names for why I think the Chiefs should be trading down, because we all rank these players differently. From 31 to like 42, you see James Pearson there. You see Donovan Ezuraku in there from Boston College. You see Josh Connerly. You see Luther Burden at 35. You see Jeff's mock guy, Nick Scorton at 39. And then you see Tyleik Williams at 43. You see Ursery at 47. Like, there's not a huge gap in those players, which I think is why this is a year that it makes sense to go into the mid to late 30s. If you can, fill that 93 pick gap that you have from the 4th to 7th round in exchange for it.
Yeah, no, I that's why I think there's going to be a lot of people who want to trade down. The question is, are there going to be a lot of people? Are there going to be, how many people are going to want to come up?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'll tell you what's common in those positions, those guys that are here, and this is the average consensus big board, is it's edge, receiver, tackle, receiver, corner, tackle, edge, corner, running back. I mean, like, it's very similar in positions where I think a lot of people could be thinking the same thing. Well, I might not get that guy, but there's 4. edges on the board that are kind of sandwiched. Why would I trade up to 31 to go get one? So yeah, I mean, part of the Chiefs will go through a lot of mock. They'll do this exact exercise that we're doing all week this week, and they'll do it again next week. And part of their main exercise, I think, needs to be what happens if you get in that Clyde Edwards-Helaire situation? What happens if you get in that Felix Anudike-Uzomah situation and you want to move back and nobody wants to trade up? Who are you taking in that spot?
Yeah, and there won't be any hesitation. They will have played it all out. They'll take their guy, and they just got it wrong back in 2020, right?
Yeah.
They took Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They played it out. He was their guy, and they got it wrong. Listen, you'll never get it wrong if you go with Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Don't let problems in your parking lot become problems for your business. Liability issues, accidents out there can set you back. Not if Gann Asphalt and Concrete's got a perfectly smooth and perfectly striped lot for you. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Northland Injury Law is Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers. Serving KC for more than 40 years. If you've been hurt in an accident, text HURT, H-U-R-T, to 22222. That's text HURT to 22222. And Best of Me Wellness. Don't forget, if you use the promo code podcast25, you'll save 25% on your entire order at Best of Me Wellness. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red Gold and Bold podcast.